How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. Today you find me in the BMW i8, a lovely exotic hybrid car to be driving around in on a day like today in quite tough conditions. This is my second time driving this car and I really want to tell you guys about it. Let's get straight into the video. I wanted to say a huge thank you before I begin to Motorland in Croydon. Motorland I've been working with a little bit recently on some cars and stuff. Basically, you're gonna see a lot more reviews on the channel in the not too distant future because I'm working with them to go and review some more cars in the price ranges that I love to talk about. So go check out Motorland, they've got some great stock going on, including this car, which is up at the moment for £36,500. Let them know I sent you as well. But this BMW i8 has surprised me in a way I never expected it to. It is a dream of a car to drive. I was worried when I got into it was going to be a boring, uninteresting, just a bit of a fad because it looks pretty, etc. kind of car. Nah, this is a proper car and I'm going to tell you why in this video. Normally when you see a pretty concept car at a motor show, you know you're never going to see it in real life. This, however, compared to the concepts we saw of it back in 2009, is pretty similar. I'll talk you through the looks of it later on, but I think it's a great looking car that is one of the most exotic looking cars that you can buy for the 30 to 40 kind of K price range. But it's not just a pretty car, it handles beautifully as well, especially when you put it in sport mode and you start throwing it through some corners. It handles the roads like a Grand Tourer should. Not like a supercar should, not like a proper sports car should, but like a Grand Tourer should. Even in weather like today, it just feels pointed, it feels planted, but it feels sensible. It feels like I'm gonna get from A to B in good time with no messing around. I'm not gonna kick the back out, I'm not gonna get anything crazy happening. It's just a planted, comfortable, grand touring cruiser that looks like an exotic car, almost at supercar levels of exotic. So let's let me chat and breeze. Let's stop the car for a second back at Motorland and I can talk you around what I think about this car. Genuinely, this car was modeled after the M1 Homage concept car, which obviously was modeled after the M1, which in my opinion is one of the most stunning classic BMWs you can actually get ever. Obviously those are worth an absolute fortune. So the fact that these start at around 30K today and go up to maybe like the 40, 45 region is pretty decent. Typically if you go on Auto Trader tomorrow, you'll find most of these at around kind of the 34 to 36K mark. There are a few obviously at the 30K range. This one is up for just under 36.5K. And when you think about that kind of value for money, that's the same kind of prices as Alpine A110s. That's like 10 grand less than my beloved Alfa Romeo 4C. And considering the exotic looks you get from this, you really cannot go wrong. It looks kind of like a little bit like the Z1 at the front, a lot more like the M1 across the whole board. I love the aerodynamic looks as well with the flying buttress style in the back. And rather than me stand here awkwardly talking to you, let me actually walk you around the car. I'm sure you've seen an i8 before, but some key features I wanted to bring out on it are this bit here, which is absolutely stunning. Obviously I said that kind of flying buttress style design at the rear. The way that it kind of directs the wind around the back of the car and keeps it squatted down to the road, I really like how that looks. Reminiscent in my head of the Ferrari 599. Obviously the most aggressive piece that most people know about this car is these butterfly style doors that pop up like that. That in itself makes this car crazy. I mean, if I walk around the front here, look at how aggressive that looks. Now I'm not going to tell you that it's perfect because at the same time you have to kind of elbow those doors to get them up. And getting in and out of this car is quite tough. There are harder cars, like the Lotus Exige, for example, is harder to get in and out of, but this is a little bit of a struggle. The interior as well is a lovely place to be. You can see it all looks very fresh, modern, and new in there, and that's kind of the key point I wanted to raise about this car. It doesn't look old in the slightest. The initial concept of this car came in 2009. There are a couple other concepts in between then. This actual car came into production in 2014, just around the same time that this car ended production. Now don't get me wrong, I think the E92 M3 is one of the best looking M3 generations you could actually get your hands on. I think it's a stunning car, but in terms of how modern it looks compared to this, it's a different world. And let me prove that point even more for you. If I come around here for a second, you'll see a BMW M4, another car that I've reviewed on the channel. I think it's a lovely looking car, very aggressive. I love these huge wheel arches and stuff, very beefy, almost like 1980s in its vibe. But again, Compare it to the i8 and it's a different world. This is something completely different from its looks perspective. It looks so futuristic, so modern, and I think that's very dangerous for future prices. One day, for certain, all these M cars are going to be collector's cars. It's just part of the game. M cars become collector cars. We haven't got the history to tell with the I cars, obviously being much newer, but given this car was the standout class leader as an exotic hybrid sports car, which looks as timeless and as futuristic as what this has, I cannot see a world where these don't become collector's cars in the future. And that is kind of the USP of this car, is how it looks. It's how it looks to other people on the roads when they see you in it. It's also how it makes you feel when you're seen driving around in it and how you feel driving it. Genuinely, this car's exotic looks are second to none within this price range. So let's get back in it and I can tell you more about how it drives to add to these pretty looks. Oh, and a quick reminder, by the way, if you're actually interested in this exact car, it's for sale at Motorland, who I've collaborated with for this video, and you'll see me working with Motorland a few more times in the future. There's a lot of cars here that I'd like to review, and they've offered me the chance to review them, so I thought I'd do it for you guys. So those exotic looks do mean something when you're out in the car. People look at the car left to right, etc. You see other drivers looking at the car as well. So it has got some kind of road presence that you just wouldn't get in quite a lot of other BMWs, if I'm perfectly honest. One of the things I found about the M4 was that, yes, it's a lovely car, yes, it's a lovely looking car, but people that look at this car is kind of anyone. People look at it and they think, wow, that's a fancy car, wow, that's an expensive car, or whatever. The M4 is not necessarily as wow looking as a car as this. But what I find so interesting about that is that here I am driving around just some residential streets in London, and the car feels like a BMW 1 Series or like a BMW 3 Series, just a normal like 320i or something. Like, it's a lot more muted when you drive it. I'm in sport mode right now, and yes, it will pick up, but it doesn't really feel like it's an exotic when you're driving it. Where the M4 looks less exotic than this feels less exotic than the M4 to drive. And that's kind of a good thing. It means that I don't always feel like I have to be on the limit, pushing the car super fast and doing crazy things in it. I can just cruise around, to use it for my journey to and from work and that kind of stuff. And it does those things perfectly, and it looks good doing it. It doesn't need to feel like a super crazy fast sports car or supercar or something. It can just cruise along comfortably. And guy back there just got out of his Mercedes and he's looking at the car because he sees what he sees is an exotic car. And the fact that his Mercedes SUV almost certainly costs more than this doesn't seem to go through people's heads. I said this about the M4. I said that it really felt uncomfortable at slow speeds. I'm in a 20 zone right now and I'm doing 20, and it feels comfortable. And for someone who lives in London or in a city where driving at high speeds isn't really a thing that happens very often, perfect. And look, I am not a fussy person when it comes to ride quality on cars. Like, I like the 4C, I like my MX-5, which is track built, that bounces off of everything. I like Lotuses, that's what I'm into, so I don't mind ruining my back in a car. And like, if I'm really sensitive, maybe I could tell you that the ride quality on this is a little bit more focused on being sporty, because it is a sports car at the end of the day. Like, this is a sporty car to drive around in. I can't in good conscience tell you this car isn't comfortable. It's very comfortable to drive. It's very comfortable to cruise around in. It's a grand tourer. I can imagine driving around Europe or doing a long road trip in this and feeling very comfortable, using the back seats, which are obviously completely unusable when it comes to sitting in them, but using them to put more luggage and that kind of stuff, and being able to have space to get around Europe comfortably with me and my wife or whatever it is. You've actually got to remember that this car is super economical. It costs £0 per year on road tax. £0 per year on road tax. Are you crazy? The interior feels premium as well, which is so nice. I've driven a lot of Mercedes recently, and a lot of those Mercedes look better than this on the interior, but the quality and the feel isn't quite as nice. This is much better. Yes, there's some plastic around in places, but they have to try and keep the car lightweight, and there's a reason why it's cheaper. But actually, it feels good. It feels comfortable. I'm very happy. I've got no quality complaints about the interior. For me, at least, I see this car as an entry-level exotic that gives you the chance to enjoy driving in something that has a bit of road presence, has a bit of intrigue to it, and isn't going to cost you an arm and a leg to run, enjoy, enjoy and use. I think if you like M4s and M2s and M135i's and those kinds of cars, this car isn't reminiscent of those BMWs. It doesn't feel like them at all. Part of that is that it's all-wheel drive, first of all. Like, this is a transverse mid-engine all-wheel drive car. That's not like most of those BMWs, which are front engine, rear wheel drive, crazy, get the back kicking out kind of cars. It's not like that at all. This is more of a Grand Tourer. It's more sensible than those cars. If you're a typical BMW lover, this might not be the car for you. It might well be. You might drive it and think, yeah, actually I love this. It's a very different BMW experience. But I understand why BMW separated this out into its own kind of area. But all those things considered, I can really understand why this car dominated its class. I mean, first of all, there's not really much in terms of competition, but also it's a really well put together package. This isn't a car for people like me. I love raw cars. I love raw experiences where I am throwing the car around and enjoying it from that kind of perspective. It's way too sensible for that. But it's absolutely a car that I could drive my wife around in without her complaining at me about how uncomfortable it is, about how silly it looks, about all those kinds of things, because it is really nice. If there's just the two of you in your family and you want to cruise around from place to place, why would you not have this as a daily driver? This is so much cooler than most other cars you can get for the same money. Emily would happily drive this, my lovely wife. I would happily drive this around. For a day-to-day car, which I'm not looking for, which is why I wouldn't buy one. I don't see why I wouldn't get one of these. This is so chill. It'd be rude of me not to also mention the reliability, because I love to talk about reliability on cars. These have been really good. So far, I mean, it's a little engine. Remember, it's 1.5 litre inline 3 turbo. That's a small engine. You've got 3 coil packs to deal with. You haven't got a bunch of spark plugs to change each time the car is spluttering or whatever. Like, it has been pretty good on reliability. There's been questions around batteries longer term, but again, like the majority of this car's power really is coming out of that engine. It's getting a bit of a kick from the rest of it. So you don't have to drive around and think to yourself, is this car gonna go wrong? Which a lot of cars in this kind of price range with this kind of prestige, you do have to think about. And then watch this. I mean, I was half throttle and it's got mad pace. Yeah, it's not crazy fast, but because it's all-wheel drive, you feel a lot more comfortable launching it than you do in a lot of other cars, a lot of other BMWs more importantly. If I launch the M4 in these conditions, the back end's coming round. Doing it in this, it's chill, it's all-wheel drive, it's a sensible car. It wants to get me from A to B in a comfortable, reasonable, happy state. I feel like an old man, but in a good way. The road holding, the rest of it, yeah, proper car, proper car. So look, to wrap up this video, I've got a couple points I want to make. Number one, if you want a car that's super exciting, super visceral, super raw, super over the top when you drive it, this isn't the car for you. I'll be dead honest with you. There are plenty of other sports cars you can choose over this that will do that. Instead, if you want a Grand Tourer that has something a little bit more special about it, a little bit more exotic about it, that's why I would go for this. This is a sensible sports car in terms of how it drives, but it's an exotic sports car in terms of how it looks. So you can either think of it as a sensible sports car or as a less sensible Grand Tourer. That's kind of how I would think about this car in actuality. And if you want a fast, exotic daily driver that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg to run, there's nothing better at this price range, at least in my head. Let me know in the comments down below if you disagree and you think there's something better. But fast, exotic looking, literally as cheap as chips to drive, 45, 46 miles per gallon you're typically getting on these. I can't think of anything. So I'm gonna sign off there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you didn't, do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're new here. Plenty more of these car reviews to come. Thanks to Motorland for making this happen. Do go and check out Motorland. I'd really appreciate it. They'd really appreciate it. Some good guys there giving me access to some great cars to give you guys some hopefully very interesting content in the future.